Hello and welcome. Welcome to another late night live stream. And yeah, in tonight's session, I'm just going to keep doing some more creative stuff. Like I said, the goal with all these is just to create something new every day. Again, we're joined by, the sweet tones of AI. As like the music, kept getting in trouble. The music that I love to listen to kept getting in trouble. So we've resorted to using AI music because, who's going to sue me? So there's no particular plan tonight. It's really just a creative session, a creative hangout. What I'm going to do is with the, I've got a show coming up. I think I'm probably going to aim to do it midweek next week, or maybe even Tuesday. So what I'm going to do in these sessions is maybe just put some content together to, get you for the show. As I mentioned in other streams, the plan is to, my creative show, I'm going to aim for about half an hour, between half an hour to an hour. I don't really want to have set lengths, but, I want to go a slightly long form. But the plan is to edit it on the fly. And the reason that came about is I think there's a lot of creativity in the constraints, and I only have a really small portion of my day that I can, just be free to explore all these creative avenues without having to necessarily overburden it with, how does it make money? How does it communicate to the client? It's just creation for the sake of creating itself. Going back to and rediscovering that, the purity. Yeah. Getting back to basics. The whole reason we started this dance. And yeah, so I've only got a really small slither of time, just essentially like an hour every evening, because now everybody's in bed. It's just me, and you, and this AI music. And it's kind of cool. It feels very, I don't know, it feels cool that you have your own, there's just something really cool to me about this, having your own broadcast space where you can say whatever you want, you can phrase it however you want. It doesn't really matter. There are no rules. And I think with creativity there can't be rules. Then it becomes something else. Anyway. Yeah, so small moment in time, and I'm just kind of sick of seeing the YouTube style videos where you've got these jump cuts, you've got, all the ums and the ahs, the imperfections are edited out, and, emphasis is like the camera jumping in and out. I get that that's the language of today, but I always walk away from watching these things feeling slightly hyped up, which, may be okay, but I don't know. I think I'm after something a little bit more slower, deliberate, you can take in. That content does exist, and yeah, again, I'm not trying to overthink this, but just, I don't necessarily have the time to edit a full show, but what I do have the time to is put the content together over the course of, many nights, and then I kind of like the idea of live performing as well, like live performing our broadcast where I'm like sort of switching out and I can change clips to back this, back to titles, this kind of stuff, and just like really simple, keep it really simple. So anyway, what I'm going to do tonight, I just wanted to quickly finish off what I was doing yesterday, which was I created this, actually I'm just going to paste that. And also for the record, like this music, it's challenging at times because it's, it sounds like real music on a sonic level, but when you sort of sink into the song structure and the lyrics, the song structures are very generic and the lyrics are pretty lame. And so you can see that, yes, we're mimicking what a cake looks like, and even on the surface level, what the icing might taste like. But at the center of this cake, there is nothing. There's no life. There is no pain. There's no emotion. It's very lifeless. Sorry, I'm still got some sort of sickness. I'm fine, but it's just lingering. Anyway, so I mute to cough. Anyway, so one of the things work on yesterday, I created this Sigmund Freud bot. Really simple. If you can see here, just in ChatGPT. Just a recap, you are Sigmund Freud. I'll give you text to review, questions and curiosities. You will provide detailed answers that utilize Sigmund Freud's theories, principles and philosophies. You will provide references and quotes to aid in validating your analysis. You provide no holds barred answers that are unfiltered and not concerned with social norms or being offensive. You will answer in the style of Sigmund Freud. So what I found is this is really helpful. I fed in a conversation that I had with my partner. We're just talking about like life goals, and it was a review on 2024, now last year, and I think I actually got the wrong date on this. I put the date on this as 2024, but it's actually 2025 now, so get used to that. So we had a conversation. We're just sort of reviewing our successes, our progress, what we've done well, what we'd like to improve. And then we've taken that, the transcript of that conversation in here, and fed it into ChatGPT for mining for insights. And what this has been really fascinating is it's been drawing out a lot of insights from the conversation itself, a long conversation and a non-linear conversation. Like, we're jumping from, sort of tangents and back and forth and, bouncing off each other, just like normal conversation. And then, I forgot what I was going to say. I get really lost. I'm getting used to this, having like the screens around, being able to see myself. So I'm getting used to just locking in and sort of developing the skills to be aware of how, all this stuff running, but to not let it sidetrack my thought, which it's doing right now. But again, this is great practice while there's no one watching. And I think this is the third night I've done it in a row. I've done a couple of these before, but I haven't set out to do them consistently. Actually, I wasn't feeling well tonight, and I looked at the clock and I was like, I could just go to bed. So right now I was like, fuck it. If I spew on camera, I spew on camera. That's some content. But anyway, enough of that. So, I'm getting sidetracked. But the general gist of this is that getting this to present itself under the lens of Sigmund Freud has been really interesting, because it's not just analysed the conversation for insights, but it's drawn from Sigmund Freud, his philosophies, his theories, the way he structures thought around human dynamics, relationships, someone's inner space. So it's been really interesting. So you analyze this conversation, you're drawing out these insights, but then you're also framing it under Sigmund Freud himself. Now, I'm no expert in psychology. I don't know much about Sigmund Freud other than he seems to be like the prototype, the easiest person to jump to if you start to think about psychology and intellectualism. So I don't know if the theories that this is running through are necessarily accurate, but something better than nothing is still something better than nothing. Like, I can still have my own take, which I currently do, and, you know, develop a self-awareness. But I think it's also helpful to externalize this. Now you can go to a therapist, you can go to a marriage counselor, couples therapy. You can try all of those things, and they're fine. But what happens if there's another option? Like, why can't you just do a quick review? Well, it's not even about questioning the greater appeal at large. It's like, what do we need? Like, for me and Kyla, what do we need straight away? Is this, and this wasn't to fix anything, but this was rather to, I guess, speed the process. Like, I'm very keen to, you know, continually keep developing myself. But can I do it faster? Like, I'm almost 40. I'll be 40 in, 6 months or so. So I think things take time. You shouldn't necessarily just rush everything, because I think in doing that you can miss a lot of like what's happening, like what's going on around you, and that's not good. So, but I think some parts of the process, because the process is a process, and it's that old saying, trust the process, and that's fine. But are there parts of the process that can be sped up or deleted? Is there stuff that, for instance, like therapy, I think there's a lot of value in speaking to a human therapist, but does it have to be just that's the only option? Like a telehealth therapist, yeah, sure. But how is there an intermediary step? Like, why do I have to go to that extent? Like, if I just want a quick tune-up or just a quick evaluation, like, why do I need to bring in doctors into this? Why do I need to getting referrals when I'm not broken? I just want to look at a different type of mirror, and so anyway, so yeah, so I've been talking about, so I was telling Kyla about this, and like, it was really awesome. Like, this has been a really great, we had a car trip today, and it was a really good prompt. Like, prompted some really good conversations, like an extension of what we had already spoken about, but it's just taken it, it gave us another level. Like, yes, we were referring to AI Sigmund Freud, but it just gave us a different layer of information in context to the original conversation that we had. And that was really powerful, because I learned a lot and I was able to relay a lot, and it's just interesting. It's really interesting. And doing this is not necessarily about, solving any big problems out there for other people. This is purely just analysing and utilising these tools for our situation. So I'm happy to share this with the people on the stream, as you see me do it. And I'm also happy to, develop this into content for my weekly show. And share it. There's no point hiding this stuff. I think it can be helpful. People might use it, people might not. Who cares? It doesn't matter. I think I did an AI project that was really awesome. It was called Rage, and essentially what it was is an AI that debates itself until it reached a consensus. And I won't go into the full detail. Well, I will at some point. I just killed a spider. Just a spider jumping in front of the camera. Yeah, Australia. Spiders everywhere. So, yeah, I won't get into full detail, but I will in a show later down the road, because I want to develop this further. But essentially what it was 6 different AI personas. So imagine you had a round table of a diverse perspective, different types of opinions or different types of perspectives and ways of seeing the world. You drop a topic in the middle, and then they debate over it until they reach a consensus. So it's a really interesting concept that never actually found an immediate value other than, a sort of a parlor trick. But I think there is something to that concept. Like, forget what the initial carnation of, what the interface looked like, because this was almost day one level of ChatGPT. Like when I think it was GPT 3 was out at that point. That's when it sort of just came out and ChatGPT just hit. I managed to get the API, and I just thought it would be funny to make an AI argue with itself. And it turned out it was really fascinating, because I just had like an ultra left and an ultra right persona debate just different topics. And so like one was pro-Trump, the other one was like a hyper libertarian. I just looked like a like a Twitter feed at that time. And when I drop a topic in, they would debate back and forth like a tennis match. And it's really interesting to see, because it's more of a simulation than well, that's what it was. It was a simulation of, an ultra left and ultra right people speaking to each other. And what I noticed in doing it was that, yes, they would argue, but then some of the points that would come up was like, oh yeah, I never thought about it like that. And then on the other side, it's like, oh yeah, that's a good point too. And then what I started to realize is, as this conversation started stacking up, I was like, they both got really good points on both sides. And some of the points actually crossed over. And then I thought, well, what happens if I then take that conversation they had, then tell GPT, analyze this conversation for where they agree, and then essentially just take all of that out and put it into just a new document, clean document by itself. And then as I did that, what I realized was that clean document, it was just full of consensus. And I was like, well, maybe that's the answer. Maybe the answer lies in not what they disagree on, and not what the extreme of one side and the extreme of the other side believe in, but maybe the answer lies in where they both agree. And this is like basics. This is basic. I'm not going to say democracy, but I would say this is just basic human nature, common sense. You think it's common sense, but I don't necessarily know if there's a platform or an environment where this type of behavior is encouraged, and then the value of it is taken out. Imagine going through X at the moment and seeing, pulling all of the left conversations and pulling all the right conversations, and then sort of where all these arguments, like taking out where all these factions agree with each other in out of this content, and then utilize that as something that value there of where people are arguing, but agreeing on what they collectively believe is true. That's something powerful, and maybe that's what community notes is. Maybe that's like a small something to that. But again, to do something like that, you need a lot of access to a lot of information, and I don't know how to do that. And so this software called Rage was really just a technical showcase that didn't really get that much attention, and people weren't that interested in it. But one thing I did do with it, I don't know if we're going to create tonight. I think probably I'm just going to keep chatting. Maybe this is just a therapy session. Yeah, the one value it did have was, so at this time there was a referendum in Parliament that was, it's called the Voice to Nation, or Voice to Parliament. Yeah, Voice to Parliament, I think. And the idea was to get Aboriginal representation in Parliament in some form. I can't remember because it was a while ago, but it was a big topic in Australia at that point. It might have been 2023 this happened. Yeah, it was 2023. And just had a new kid, first son was born, and just sort of grappling with that transition from you're just an individual in a relationship, but ultimately, your focus up until your first child has always been about you, essentially. And then you've got this new person in the world that's 100% totally reliant upon you for everything: survival, guidance, education, and protection, nourishment, entertainment. Yeah. And you've got to... So for me, there was that transition of, breaking that chain from me as an individual to me as a father. So in that process, it was, there's a lot going on in my mind. And plus you're also with a partner who is also going through the same sort of, transformation, and you're doing it together. So there's tension in the air, there's confusion, there's a lot of questions, there's, it's chaos, beautiful chaos, but it's still chaos. And this voice to partner thing is like, well, I don't want to do a dummy vote, because I think it just seems not in the spirit of being a free citizen. The definition of free is still quite murky, but it's not in the spirit of these things. So I thought, well, I just don't have time. It's not that it's not important. My brain is at capacity. I just don't have this. There is no bandwidth left to do this, because I was still looking for work at the time and trying to get client work in. And yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot for everybody, but especially it was a lot for me too. And I had this debating system that worked really well. And I thought, what happens if I just get all of the conversations, all of the information I can find for the for, put it into a document, and then all of the information, articles for the against, I put that into a document. Then I will just give one document to the for AI to read and form and debate for, and the against do the same thing, give it the document and give it all the the information for against. Yeah, it turns out it worked really well. It worked so well, in fact it was incredible. I saw this debate play out with all this information, and I saw like, yeah, okay, I kind of see it that way. I've never thought of about it like that, and that's a really interesting point. And ultimately from that, I made my decision just from that debate, because I was able to distill, what was a lot of talk from all sides, and just getting sort of caught up in the whirlpool of noise and bias and agendas, propaganda, if you will, to just getting a very simple structured debate, like watching a tennis match, but filtering and funneling all of this information in a sort of a more structured forum. And the reason why I chose articles is because I figured, well, what's average Joe consumer? How are they going to get their information? They're most likely going to get it off news feeds. They're going to get it off Facebook, articles from The Guardian, from the Sydney Herald, Morning Herald, to wherever. Just a standard, I guess mainstream media. So I figured, well, this is how I'm going to base the system. I'm just going to base it on the very first page of Google all of the articles for and all the articles against, because I figured, well, no one else is going to go to the second page. I think that's probably even more research than what most people are going to do. But just to keep it very, very standard, not to go out there and find white papers, or not to go out there and interview experts, because I think, well, this is not the information that a voting public are going to get. So that's not how we're going to form this debate. And it was incredible to watch the answers go back and forth. And I thought, well, I had been approached to take this system, this debating system. It had already been in an art gallery, and it had been at a science festival, had been on stage in Melbourne and Sydney. What I wanted to do with this, I thought, well, no one's going to read text. So I got invited to a art, what would you call it? A festival? Yeah, it was a festival, big festival. Got invited to be an installation. And so I thought, well, this is great, because people have to vote in a week after this festival. They're going to have to vote. And so I was like, well, I'll do this. I'll put this can be my installation. And again, I was actually looking for a job at this point, and I think I actually had a job, and I was about to start the week after. This was working for a mining company. It's like, I don't have time to put this system together. So I thought, what I'm going to do is keep it simple. I'm going to have a big screen on the left, representing the left, and a big screen on the right, representing the right. Then I'm going to have them facing each other. Most people look at computer interfaces like it's presented to the user. The way I sort of presented this was more about this system talking to this the hemisphere of this system is talking to the hemisphere of this system, and then it's just like a more visceral way of distinguishing this back and forth. And like, that looked really cool. So I would have, like, I think the right was red, like just a fully red screen. On the screen was vertical, because I didn't want it to look like a computer. I wanted it to look something a little bit more robotic. So look, it was on so it was all red and had text contrast, like I think it was white, and then the other one was blue, I believe. Yeah, I think it was blue. So red and blue. It wasn't even about creating compelling, fancy design interface. It was sort of cutting deeper at a visceral level, so people can instantly just like, no, okay, that's good, that's bad, without saying either one is good or either one's bad. It's really just creating this very simple representation that even a child could walk in and figure, okay, there's an argument happening between computers. Great. And so I thought, well, people aren't going to read this, but I should put the text on screen. I think what could, it's all about being visceral. The way I sort of looked at this is I wanted the technology to step out of the way. So that's why the interfaces weren't overly designed. I didn't want people to look at it like a computer system or an AI system. I just wanted that to be the secondary layer, and for the conversation, the debate itself, to be primary. So what I decided to do was, this was before voice was a big thing. Like, AI generated voices had sort of come out, but nothing like this, where it was an AI talk, vocalized into another AI, which hadn't been done before in this kind of way. And so, yeah, put in the topic, and the topic was set as the exact question, or the exact question that was going to be on the ballot form. So again, I didn't add in or engineer any manipulation to achieve a result. I just plugged in exactly what the question was going to be asked to every Australian, every voting Australian. I put in the accessible topics that most Australians are going to read for both left and right, for and against. And then I just press play, and it worked, and it worked really well. And with the voices, I thought, well, what sort of voices do I use? Do I use Australian accents? Do I use just the default system American? And I've sort of been playing around with this voice cloning thing, and I haven't done my music. Let me choose my music. I think it's finished. Yep. So I played around with this voice cloning thing, and I thought, well, I could do famous Australians. I was like, no, it doesn't really make sense. And I thought, what would be great is if I did the Prime Minister and then the leader of the opposition party as the for and against, because they were essentially, it was a bipartisan thing. one camp was for, the other camp was against. And so what ended up happening with the topic in there, you press play and you're having the Prime Minister of Australia and the opposition leader arguing back and forth over this referendum. And I said it took for about 25 minutes. It was incredible. Like, it was so visceral, so guttural, and it was really helpful. And so I put this out there for I remember setting up my little installation. And it wasn't an expensive installation. It was like a desktop computer, some monitors I had brought off Facebook Marketplace, like secondhand for $50 each. And I wasn't trying to be like some tech demo. You're just really trying to make a point. And people hated it. Well, actually, people were very indifferent about it, because I remember the old people would come in and look at it, and everybody was talking about the debate. Everyone was talking about the concept, but no one was actually talking about this system. Everyone was sort of wrapped up in their ideologies of, well, I believe this and I think this is best for Australia's future. No one actually commented on, here is someone who's unemployed, who put together, like duct tape this AI system together using like the APIs at their dining room table, whacked a couple of monitors, was able to mimic the Prime Minister and opposition leader and have this debate play out. No one commented on that. It's like that's the thing. That's the thing you should be looking at. Or the idea that this sort of consensus or this argument process is happening by a machine. And no one... I don't know. I think that was like so far over people's heads that they didn't really get it. And it wasn't, in terms of like the show, the event itself, I think it was a failure, because people would kind of look at it like, yeah, that's not bad. And I'm thinking, wow, this is like so unusual. And this was like 18 months ago, so it was even more unusual back then, because ChatGPT was only sort of gaining, or outside the headlines and outside the tech community and the pioneering edge of the business community, in the mainstream parts there wasn't really anything. So yeah, it didn't really capture other people's imagination like it captured mine. And I also got kicked out of the show. So, and this is another story, but the event organizer came in and saw it, and they were deeply offended, which is actually another point to this as well. They were deeply offended that they're saying, like, you don't have any right to say this, you don't have a voice, you're not Aboriginal, this is not your place to be saying. I was like, well, in 1 week's time I have to vote for this. By law, legally, I have to vote. Every voting citizen, every adult citizen in the country has to vote on this. So we all have a say. And the point of it wasn't to come to a conclusion. Like, this one didn't actually make a consensus, because I didn't want it to lead to a consensus. I just wanted to have a tennis match, back and forth, counterpoint to counterpoint, and back and forth, to see where it would go. And so, yeah, there was no bias to this, but the event organizer didn't see it like that, and which is quite sad for her, but it's not surprising for me, is that they're so wrapped up in this ideology. I think it proved a point, actually, that people get so wrapped up, with good intent or not. I think everybody actually has a good intent. I think we all have malaligned visions. Oh no, well, maybe we do. We all want to get to the same place, but we all have varying differences on how we get there and who should lead it, and yeah, and who's the most important. I think that's what we debate a lot. But yeah, so that was another thing. They didn't even comment about, their comment wasn't on, she should have come in angry saying, you've come in here, you've plagiarized you've plagiarized our leaders, our democratic leaders. You've mimicked them without permission. You've created this system that is not taking into any consideration the consequences of affecting real people and their opinions. I'm just making stuff up. Like, I don't necessarily believe any of those are true either. Yeah. Like, you completely disregarded all of that. No, it was more... Yeah, it was more that she was just wrapped up in that she believed that a certain outcome was true and was morally just in happening, and didn't see the truth. Blinded by ideology so much that you can't see what's true. And what was true was very simple. It was a thing arguing back and forth because she wanted... I think she was in the for camp. But she could have seen that someone could derive a for argument, a for justification from this, as equally someone could derive an against argument from this. So, anyway, it was sad. And then, I guess to top it off, that, you know, it sort of affected the relationship. I put so much time and energy into this that I really did miss the mark in putting that energy back into the family. And again, I was really new to this. Like, in hindsight now, I can see, you know, I can see how it unfolded the way it did. But at the time, you know, I guess it's like everything. You think you're doing the right thing. Like, the intention is good. It's just sometimes the way to get there is a bit cloudy. And I think hindsight's a really good teacher. Experience is a good teacher. Self-awareness is, you know, essential. But self-awareness in itself is a process. It's a step-by-step process. You don't just suddenly wake up one day and you're self-aware. It's sort of like walking through a dark hallway where you can barely see, and with every time you bump into the wall, your flashlight just gets a tiny bit brighter, and after enough bumping, it gets so bright that you can actually just see what's in front of you. And you don't have to bump into every section of the wall to be able to see it. You don't have to bump into so many walls so many times that your light is bright enough that it illuminates not the whole place, but enough to see you through to your vision. And so that's where I'm at now. So I learned from that. Yeah, it did affect the relationship, and that was hard because I put so much into this, you know, psychologically, intellectually, spiritually, and it didn't unfold how I wanted to. Like, no one was interested in it. There was no real use case scenario. Like, it was not going to help any clients, and I guess my ego kind of took a big beating because I felt like a failure. I sort of put myself out there, showed everybody, oh, hey, I'm doing this thing, gave everything I got, and it didn't work. And then it's just like, you know, I guess like the fear of failure is one thing, but the fear of failure publicly, that's something else. And in the grand scheme of things, it was on a very, very small scale. It's like, and I don't think many people even thought about it. So, yeah, and that was rage. So I'm going to actually put that back up. I think, was there anything else to speak about that? No, I don't think so. I'm actually going to put this back up in the show topics because I really love this concept. I'm just going to put rage, self-debating AI. And I think what I want to talk about with this is, I want to go back to the theories and the philosophies of it, because I was reading something the other day that I wrote, and it's actually really fascinating. I'll see if I can actually bring it up. Let's just say Freud analysis. I'm just going to send this to Kyla too. I might just have to sort that out. So, give me the link. So I'm just going to. Yes, and again, I apologize for the music. Well, no, I don't apologize. Okay, so I sent that off. Yeah, so back to just share that with her. I think I was talking about about this Freud analysis thing, and yeah, she was fascinated by it. So, but what I wanted to open something recently, show topics, this one. So I found a document, a folder that had all of the theories that I came up with, and these theories came up in tandem with ChatGPT. And this was a time when, like, this kind of stuff of getting ChatGPT to help you write something wasn't a common thing at that point. And so here are the perspectives that I had in there. The traditionalists. Their stance was they defend traditional values and established norms. The communication style is respectful, authoritative, and cautious. Underlying principles is tradition, stability, and order. So I actually use these as the persona prompts rather than feeding it lengthy sort of like backstories. And partly because at the time there wasn't the token limit to be able to do that. Like, it was really small back then, and it was actually amazing that I was able to run so much through this on such a small token limit. You know, it involved feeding things into arrays, and then so I'd have to do it in a process instead of just having like one main bot that had all these tentacles in different personas. How I had to do it was I'd have to have different bots performing different parts of, you know, the conversation. So it would sort of be feeding itself over 3 or 4 different bots per, or by bots I mean like an AI, an instance of an AI, rather than just having one AI up here. I'd have all these instances of them running so that it would sort of feed it in layers. And the reason why I had to do that is because the token limit was so small. I had to sort of like do this much, and then I wanted to, you know, then take that part of the conversation to the next part in the assembly line, and then transform that to get the answer at the end. That answer at the end will then sort of feed into the next process, like the next loop. And then, you know, this is how it sort of all worked. And so it worked, but it cost a lot of money too. I think like one debate would cost about $4 in, you know, in running that. Which is because then I would, because I'll be able to crank up the token limit to its maximum potential, so I get the most detailed answers. Because if you had the token limit, let's say like 100, I can't even remember what the measures were, but back at the time, like let's say it was 100, it'd be a very short, succinct, like not fully written out, not much depth in the thought process. When I cranked it up, you would have like, it would be a longer paragraph, would have like richer detail in it, but it would just cost more money. So I used to crank it up, and it cost $4. That doesn't sound like much for an analysis, but when you're just developing and testing this, because at the time you couldn't test this locally, and yeah, it would cost money to do all this stuff. So, but anyway, I had the innovator, the advocate for new ideas, technologies, and change. I had the skeptic, questions the validity of arguments and seeks evidence to support claims. The empath considers the emotional and social aspects of a topic, focusing on the well-being of individuals and communities. The utilitarian prioritizes the greatest good for the greatest number of people, offering emphasizing practicality and efficiency. And the ethicist evaluates the moral and ethical dimensions of a topic, considering the rights and responsibilities of all parties involved. And yeah, and that was a really interesting mix, because that's where I found that there were many instances of tests that I tried in the personas, and I can't remember them totally, but I do remember one instance where I thought, well, for personas, what happens if I just make the 16 personalities the Myers-Briggs? What happens if I just find a way to formulate the Myers-Briggs into something? Sorry, I got a cough again. Sorry, got this damn cough. Got my cup of tea, or love bug. Sorry. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, so the Myers-Briggs I tried, and I thought, well, here's a framework for how people behave, and I sort of jerry-rigged something together. I used ChatGPT to help me shape how this would work, but I eventually got it there, and it was just like a series of all these, like this array of prompts, and it sucked. It was awful. It was very weak. It was very vanilla answers. They kind of lacked any sort of, passion is hard to do with an AI, because how do you determine what passion is? Is passion passion is probably a more physical thing than intellectual. It just had nothing. It was very weak. And so I did have a realization. I'm seeing if I can remember what the realization was, why what I came up with worked. Let me think. I think this was it. I found that the Myers-Briggs and that analysis was about the individual, and it was about how do they see themselves. They see themselves as introverted, extroverted, all that other stuff that makes the Myers-Briggs what it is. So I was very much focused on the inner world. And I think that was the problem, because they weren't taking the lens in the perspective of, it wasn't an outward perspective. On the flip side of what I came up with the innovator, skeptic, empath, utilitarian, ethicist, the traditionalist, is that was about externalization. That was about, how does this persona see the world? So here's an example. You can be an extrovert, and I'll pick on something that's in the media now. You can be an extrovert and be pro-Trump, but you can also be an introvert and be pro-Trump as well. So the delineation between extroversion as a measure on a scale to introversion as a measure doesn't necessarily change a perspective on the world. It changes how you go out there and interface with the world. You might be quiet, or you might be very loud, but your opinion doesn't really equate to that. How you engage with people is probably more of the Myers-Briggs, but your opinion, your perspective is not that. And that's why I think what I came up with was really good, because I thought it gave not just a balance to all the different personas, but they also created a counterpoint to all the personas. So having a traditionalist and having an innovator, there are two complementary value structures there, but there's an equilibrium there too. Like there's opposition there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the two cancel each other out. It's that in the Venn diagram of where the traditionalist and the innovator cross over, because there is absolute crossover, even in just you can still be a traditionalist and an innovator, and there are elements of, respect for traditional stability and order that can absolutely be applied to someone who advocates for new ideas, technologies, and change. Because not everything should change, and brand new technology shouldn't just be created because it's the latest thing in town. And so when you have those personas like counterbalancing each other, it's where they cross over. That's what makes it really interesting. And then when you've got these other personas in this round table and they're sort of crossing over as well, it's only at the intersection of all of those perspectives, like that's probably the answer. And the reason why it's probably the answer, because it's not necessarily about finding objective truth, it's just about finding consensus on what people believe in, because it is that objective truth that sits in the middle. That's probably the best answer to give a community, a couple, a society, a civilization, to then take that and action that into something. There's no point taking something that no one agrees with, because it still takes the entire population to come together to make that possible. So if one tiny group says that this is the right answer, and it may be the right answer, but if no one else believes it or stands for it, then this energy and this inertia, this friction resistance to get culture to move there may not actually happen in the time or in the way that it needs to happen. I think a lot of it needs everybody's input, because everybody's affected. Like, it takes an entire planet to run an entire planet. You can't just rely on a handful of people to do it. And I think this is where, it gets dangerous when a smaller, marginalized group suddenly has the authority bestowed upon them, not by consensus, but by force, populism, by the fear of not getting the votes. So these hyper-ideological movements that may have not been amplified, may not have had the megaphone like they did before, suddenly get thrusted into place that the majority don't agree with. The majority don't want to put their energy into making this happen. But then that creates a resistance. It creates a resistance and a ripple across the board and a friction. And then I think that's where the second and third order effects come into place, where it creates a tension, and that tension then boils and bubbles up and becomes another problem, another spotfire to put out, rather than just keeping it simple and just moving on what everybody believes in. Because there are going to be different opinions on things. But when some things affect everybody, then everybody should have an opinion, and the popular vote should win. I think it's dangerous I think representative democracy is also dangerous, because then it becomes this a cult of personality, and then we sort of get decisions made within the foibles of vulnerable human beings. You've got to sort of ask yourself, for what sort of person wants to lead other people? Like, that's not normal. And normal not in the sense of it's abnormal. Normal in the sense of an even distribution. It's not, there's usually one leader to a group. So just in that contrast, like, it's not normal. But then you think of, okay, we've got a group of 100 people and there's one person in the room that wants to run everybody. They just have it within their, that's just in their DNA to do so. And they may be very good at it. But then you have to sort of question, what is it about that one person that makes them different from that other 99? And then it's like, okay, well, why? Like, is that the best way of doing it? Just because that's how it's been done? There's a really interesting... I used to go to this philosophy club. It was called Philosophy in the Pub. And it was really interesting because it was run by the university, and it had the PhDs and the professors there and students, but it was also accessible to anybody who was in the pub who would go join it and just hear these things. So it was great. You had access to these really high level philosophical analytics, and then you would see just like these common headlines sort of run through this philosophical machine, and then you could see how this brain power, this group of people would deconstruct these things to find the right answer, or a better way of looking at it, or other ways to see it. And they had the technology, like the linguistic technology, to be able to do that. Yeah, I don't know what I was going to say with that. I kind of got lost up in that image. Well, that's our hour done. I didn't do any AI stuff. I did copy and paste what I did yesterday into a Word doc, so I guess I could call that work. But hey, these sessions aren't even about... They're just about this creative exploring, just having this time and place and space to have these thoughts, because we live these lives where it's not always possible to just sit here and ponder and to just think out loud, or just to run here and just make something. And I think that's why I'm trying to encourage in myself, is just to do this every day, 1 hour a day, and hopefully some people watch it and they get motivated to do their creative hour every day. And I think the world would be better for it. There's a lot of negativity out there. Well, I think there's actually a lot of beauty out there, but I think there's just a lot of negativity getting amplified. If it bleeds, it leads. So I'm going to continue dabbling with this debating machine. I don't know, I've just got a gut feel. I'm not trying to replace anything. I'm not trying to, bring in a new government. Well, maybe that's, before I jump into it, maybe that's what I've got to figure out. It's like, what is the thesis with this? Because I could just, even just talking tonight, like thinking this really showed it was a way to bring out people's ideological biases and not actually see what was right in front of them. Those people at the exhibition, they were locked up in what their team believed was right, and then the other team was wrong. They didn't see what was right in front of them. There was this AI system that was debating complex topics in a novel way, created by somebody who isn't a developer, who used ChatGPT to code this system and present it from their dining room table, and they're unemployed. Like, how did anybody miss that? They did. But maybe that's my fault as a communicator, or maybe it just wasn't something that was going to resonate. And it probably doesn't matter if it doesn't resonate. But it's funny. I had a meeting the other day, and this person came up to me, very credentialed, very smart person, and they wanted to start a business. Somehow repurposing AI in marketing, which is, it's already like hypersaturated. And I was just thinking, is this the best way? Here we have this super Jesus, this Oracle tool, and the most powerful thing that this planet has ever brought about, a digital intelligence at a planetary scale, tapping into the entire breadth of human knowledge, experience, creative output, and brought about a system that can instantly call upon any of that information in milliseconds. And we're going to create Instagram posts from that. And it's like, even just sort of putting that, describing that as an equation. It's like, that's so stupid. It's like, if we're going to, how will people look at it? Oh, look back at us in 100 years' time, and we're doing that. We're doing social posts using AI, the techno Jesus, and it's just so dumb. So that's where my heart, by heart I mean my intuition, sort of had some pushback from that. It's like, no, you've got to be more ambitious, but ambitious in a way that is practical and necessary for now. I think it's okay to think and sort of bring ideas that are so far in the future, bring them now. But I think what they really need, and this is what this is learned experience by this point, what they really need is a purpose right now. They can be future led, but they must solve a problem right now, cheaper than like competitors, or better than anything that's ever existed. I think to bring in a new product category it's always going to be dangerous, because there are a lot of moving pieces so far out of your control to get like the zeitgeist of everything, of everyone seeing and understanding what this is, unless the product is so simple conceptually but advanced in its execution. So there is something there, and that's what this year is going to be dedicated to. Is I don't necessarily want to use AI as like a solution looking for a problem, because that's a lot of what currently exists now. It's more about someone has invented a new form of fire, and now it's like, well, how can we use this fire? Can we use it to create warmth? Can we set up our campfire? Can we ward off predators? Can we stay warm at night? Can we cook our food? Can we burn down the forest? Whatever it may be. That's how I'm looking at this. Is, okay, we found this new thing. Imagine if an alien spacecraft landed just in your backyard. and trying to figure out, okay, well, there's all this crazy technology on it. What can we do with this? It's like that's how I'm looking at this. So I'm very conscious of not a solution, looking for a problem, but there's this incredible power and this energy, this life force, if you will, is right here in my hands, and it's in everybody's hands. And it's like, well, what can we do with this? It's like, oh, well, let's try and over there, see what happens, and this and that. So at least that's what I'm doing for now. Also with this, to sort of be fully open and transparent, like I do have to like, again, I've still got to generate my income for my family, so that's why I've given myself, when everybody sleeps, it's kind of it's a negotiation with myself in removing any sort of guilt that I'm not 100% on in generating income, and it's giving this time and space for just this to exist as it is, serendipitous. So that's it for tonight. I think maybe I'm thinking about putting some sort of agenda towards these. I was like, oh, maybe they are just talking, but I think I will set the goal that over the course of these sessions, these live real-time ones, is that this will be right in the content for the weekly show. And the weekly show is something I just want it to be like a flagship production, bringing all these ideas in just a very concise, well-crafted manner, just so it can be helpful to people. I think the Freudian thing will be helpful. Even, I might even just post a link to it so people can try it out for themselves for free. And I just demonstrate how I made it. So simple, and I'll just break it down. Like the formula of creating a prompt like that. And I guess the backstory was in the reason why. Then I'll just share that out. Like, yeah, that's it. I do have some more equipment coming in because I also come from a artistic background. Like, my background is graphic design, music, multimedia in terms of video editing, 3D animation, compositing, the big one, 2D animation, like 2D, I mean like After Effects 2D, and a whole host of creative things, and drawing's one of those. Drawing's actually where I started when I was a little kid. So take that further, I might just what I'm going to have is just a top down camera view. I'm going to have my my drawing books in front of me and just write and talk and just again, this time and space to just figure stuff out. And we're going to listen to AI music because it's free and no one can take me down with it. So that's not bad. Like, this is quite nice. But that's it for now. So that's another one in the can. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.